to Making It Last, where we share ideas to help families tackle major issues. I'm your host, Regina DeMeo, and with me today is Frank Kearney, who's been helping families for over 20 years with personal injury matters. Thanks for being here, Frank.
Hi, Regina. It's great to be here. Thanks.
Absolutely. So, the first question I have for you is, how do people know, someone hits you from behind when you're driving? I mean, how do you know that you need an attorney in a case?
Sure, that's a great question, because sometimes you don't need an attorney. I mean, it's really going to depend on the extent of the injuries, on what happened in the accident. We hear a lot about personal injury cases, personal injury lawsuits in the news. Insurance companies have done a wonderful job from their perspective of trying to convince everyone that anyone injured in an auto accident is somehow a faker or malingering or taking advantage of the system. And actually, it's usually the opposite that happens. I mean, what you have to watch out for is insurance companies taking advantage of you.
Right.
Now, there's a couple ways to sort of protect yourself, I would say, to make sure to do that. First is just to kind of take your time. There's no rush. If the insurance company is calling you, wanting to get a statement, wanting to meet with you, sometimes want to come to the hospital if you're hospitalized after an accident, there's no need to do that. You don't need to do that. Take your time, get the medical treatment that you need, get the medical care, get yourself squared away, and focus on healing, focus on your rehab and getting better.
Well, let's back up, because I know some people who, they think they're fine. The moment of the impact, there's maybe like a little bit of a damage to the fender, but they don't really feel anything. And sometimes it's not until the next day or the day after that people will feel pain. So would you recommend that people, even though they think they're fine, should get like the contact information and insurance information from the other person?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would definitely do that. I would say a couple things to do after an accident just across the board would be, yes, get the name, the insurance company, the license plate number, all the contact information from the person who hit you, first off.
Okay.
And then second, everyone has cameras on their cell phones these days. If there's damage to the cars, take pictures of, the damage to the cars or how they're placed in the intersection. That can help you later if the other driver says, no, you stopped short, or no, you caused the accident, or someone else was involved. I'd say that's the second thing. And the third is if there are any witnesses, any bystanders, any other drivers who stop or people on the sidewalk who see it, get their contact information as well, and then follow up and talk to them, because they can be helpful in establishing really what happened. Because remember, not only is the other driver's insurance company going to try to minimize your injuries and your damages, they're probably also going to blame you.
Right.
They're going to say it's your fault, it's not our driver, you were doing something you shouldn't have been doing. And so you want to do everything you can at the beginning to sort of put that to rest, to make sure that to the extent you can, you don't give them any availability, any ammunition for doing that.
Yeah, it's funny. People don't want to get involved, right? But I remember there was this time we were in New York, and this guy, he was just being very aggressive, and he switched lanes and hit this Mercedes that was right in front of me. And I felt really badly. And then I could hear the guy screaming at the guy in the Mercedes saying, like, this is your fault. It's not my fault at all. And I could tell that he was going to need some help. So I actually stopped the car, and I gave him my business card. And I said, look, if you need a witness for anything, I'm happy to back up what actually happened here. And like a couple of weeks later, I actually did have to write a letter explaining what I had witnessed. And then he sent me a very nice thank you note with a gift card, too, because he said it was so nice of you to stop and, give me your information. And that was useful in his claim with the insurance company. So, you never know when you're going to need somebody's help. But, taking like the 5 minutes to just like stop and tell him, hey, I saw what happened, and if you need me, just contact me. It didn't take much of my time, and it was very useful to him.
No, absolutely, and it's critical, and it's unfortunate these days that that's a little bit of what our society's become. We're all in such a hurry, we're in such a rush, we all think we're so important, we can't stop to help someone, even for a minute, even to see if they're okay.
Right.
To see if they need any help. Can you call an ambulance for them? Can you give them directions to a hospital? Can you help them in any other way? Can you wait with them? Maybe they're scared. Maybe it's dark. They're they're a young person perhaps who's hasn't been in this situation or doesn't have this type of experience. But you're right. The other thing is to stop to document it. What if the driver who hit him was drunk or was texting, what have you, or some kind of road rage incident? I mean, you're stopping and kind of documenting that and what happened can prevent something from occurring down the road. And remember, it's not just that driver. It could be anyone in our community.
Right.
It could be you, could be me, could be your spouse, your kids, your grandmother, whomever. I mean, and I think that's another critical point in stopping to help. Like you say, it only takes a few minutes.
Right.
It's really not much more than giving your contact information, maybe talking to the police officer who comes to investigate it.
Right.
But even that, you're talking about a few minutes out of your day.
Yeah. And it can make a huge difference in a case.
Absolutely. Not just in the situation of the person who got hurt in that accident, but like I said, maybe in preventing this down the road.
Right.
For all you know, that person's driving on a suspended license. They've had 3 DUIs, and they shouldn't be out there.
Right.
And just one person stopping can prevent that in the future.
That's a great point. So what would you say is like a normal time frame from the time that someone is injured? Let's say it's a little more serious than just a fender bender, and there's medical expenses involved, and they do have to get an attorney. Like, what's that time frame look like?
Sure, and really that depends on the nature of the injuries, which I always tell people you can't speed up and you can't slow down. So you just need to do all the rehab that's necessary for your condition and for your injuries.
Okay.
And get that squared away. Sometimes maybe that's just a couple of months. Maybe it's a year or two. But usually what we do, if someone has a serious injury, something where they require surgery, they can't feed their family, they're going to be off work for a long time, or they have a permanent injury, for example, we'll do a couple of things simultaneously. First, we always want the people we help to focus on their rehab and their medical care and let us worry about everything else.
Right.
And that's really, I think, one of the reasons why you hire an attorney for a serious case, is to be able to do that. The other thing I would say is just to continue to progress as much as you can and not let the accident affect your life to such an extent that it's running your life. It should really be the other way around. That's another reason I think to get an experienced attorney. Again, if you have a serious accident. Now, if it's a relatively minor injury, do you need an attorney? You may not even need an attorney, quite candidly.
Right.
If you're just going to get checked out a couple times to your primary care doctor, and she says, okay, come back in a month if you're feeling okay, or do some stretching or what have you, and it looks like it's a relatively minor occurrence, kind of a blip, and you know your own body, you're feeling better, then no, that's certainly something you could probably handle on your own without even getting an attorney. And in fact, we tell a lot of people who call, we give them free information, we give them our a book that we wrote on accident cases.
Okay.
That has a lot of information in there about whether you need an attorney, and if you're going to handle the case on your own, which you can, kind of how you do that a little bit.
I'm sure it's a lot about maintaining your documents.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean that's the key is following up, maintaining the documents, and then not getting pushed around by an insurance company. Because a lot of times insurance companies will be very aggressive. They will be calling people, sending people out, sending experienced adjusters out, who have a whole script of what they want to get from you in a recorded statement.
Okay.
And they're going to try to do that as soon as they can while someone is oftentimes still on pain medications, still in a lot of pain, still recovering, still worried about getting back to work and going to the doctor, paying their bills, that kind of thing.
Right.
I would say the biggest piece of advice I would give people is just slow down. You don't need to do that right away.
Right. It's not like they're a police officer that has the right to go and get a statement from you right away.
Absolutely. They don't have that right at all. You have to give it to them.
I see. Same thing with the medical records. They don't have a right to your medical records unless you sign stuff.
Right, sure. Sure, you don't need to sign anything right away. They will try to push a quick settlement for you. And again, it's something, especially if your injury involves your back or your neck, something that could linger.
Right.
The worst thing you want to do is accept a check from the insurance company, a week after the accident, and then 2-3 months later, you can't get out of bed. You go to the doctor. He says, "Well, yeah, that's from the accident that you had a few months ago."
Right, and you've signed a waiver releasing all further claims.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I would say, one, take your time if you've been in an accident, especially a serious accident. Two, if it's something where you need an attorney, again, take your time to look for the right person, the right fit for you and your family. I mean, you'll get bombarded with TV ads and those annoying internet like pay-per-click ads.
Yeah.
And of course now even some lawyers have, they call them investigators. They're really runners. I mean, they're people who will get the police report or some other public information. They will hound you to sign up with an attorney. And, my advice, run from anyone who does that. Anyone who contacts you, sends you letters, send someone to your house. That's just not what you want. That's just not what you want, period. So
as far as compensating your attorney when they're, basically you guys are doing everything. You're like fielding all the phone calls, writing letters, collecting all the documents. So are people paying you by the hour, or how does that work?
Sure. No, we work on a contingent fee, which means there's no upfront fee, there's no retainer, we don't bill people by the hour. And the reason for that is really people are out of work, they have medical bills that they may be struggling with, they have an uncertain future with respect to their injury and how much future medical care they're going to need. They don't need the extra stress, we don't think, of paying an attorney every month to represent them. So we work on a contingent fee, which just means it's a percentage of any total recovery or settlement or verdict down the road. It comes at the end of the case only if we win the case.
All right, so you're bearing a huge risk.
We do take a risk, sure. And, but we don't take every case, of course. We only take serious and legitimate cases. If we think someone is a little shady or someone has an unreasonable expectation or someone is just going to be difficult to work with, we don't take that case. And a lot of that is because of, the risk that we've put in, all the work we do, we get paid at the end. We also front all the expenses in cases, which means that anytime there's doctors charged for their reports, for example.
Or if you have to take a deposition.
Absolutely. Deposition costs, court reporters, court filing fees, expert witness fees, to meet with a physician about someone's injuries or to hire an expert. Those are all, costs that are associated with any serious case, especially if it gets filed, especially if it gets to trial.
Most don't go to trial, though. I'm assuming most are able to settle.
Right. Most cases do settle, and for a number of reasons. I mean, one is those are usually pretty good cases, pretty legitimate cases. We try to do all the work on the front end to convince the insurance company that we're right, that our client was right and was seriously hurt and, deserves fair, reasonable compensation for his or her damages, for all the harm that the other driver, the other person caused.
Right.
And that can be the medical expenses that someone's incurred, the surgery, the hospital expenses, the future medical care.
And just the pain and suffering while you're going through that process.
Absolutely. All the pain the person's been in, their lost income, their lost wages, the lost opportunities. Right. All of those factors come into play.
Well, we're going to take a short break, and then we will be right back.
2 outs with a runner on first base. Now the big guy comes up to bat, hitting .342 with 92 RBIs and 36 homers.
Chill raw and prepared foods promptly. 1 in 6 Americans will get sick from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
Welcome back to Making It Last, where we share ideas to help families tackle major issues. I'm your host, Regina DeMeo, and with me today is Frank Kearney, who's been helping families for over 20 years in the area dealing with personal injury matters and workers' comp. Thanks for being here, Frank.
Hi, Regina. It's great to be here.
So we're talking about personal injury cases, and I just want to understand the difference. What is the difference with that and workers' comp cases?
Sure. A personal injury case is basically something where someone injures you for whatever reason. Now, you've got to prove that they did the wrong thing. For example, if you're on the Beltway, you've got to prove they violated, one of the rules of the road, for example.
Right.
They were texting, they weren't paying attention, they ran into you, they made an unsafe lane change, they crashed into you, and you were hurt as a result. Mm-hmm. And so that's sort of one side of it, or one type of personal injury case.
Right.
Now, another is a work injury, any kind of injury on the job that an employee has. And that can be anyone's fault or no one's fault, so to speak. For example, a construction worker could just pick up a bag of cement and hurt his back. As long as he's on the job site, he should be able to get workers' compensation benefits. Now, no one necessarily caused that back injury. No one ran into him. No one tripped him.
I see what you're saying.
Nothing fell on him. So that's the main difference is sort of the standard. And in a work injury situation, when you get hurt on the job, you don't have to prove that it's anyone's fault. And everyone in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia are entitled to workers' compensation benefits under the law. If you get injured on the highway, if you get injured somewhere else, in a car accident, for example, you have to prove it's the other person's fault. Now, sometimes you can have both. You can be on the job if you're delivering...
a truck driver.
Absolutely. A truck driver delivering parts can get hit by another truck. Well, then he could have a workers' compensation case with his employer and that insurance company, and a case against the driver who hit him.
Right.
And that's complicated. There's a lot of interplay between those two. The workers' compensation benefits, will usually start right away. That's another big difference is you don't wait typically in a workers' compensation setting for a work injury. And for a lot of good reasons. I mean, you want to get the medical treatment that you need right away. You want to get back to work as soon as you can. And so it's much different, and those benefits should begin relatively quickly and start and kind of go along as you're out of work, versus in a personal injury case when the only payment would be at the end of the case when the case settled, or after a jury verdict, or the end of the case.
So I imagine some people might be afraid to report to an employer, hey, I was injured, like you said, like picking up a bag of cement or something like that. Are there laws that prevent employers from retaliating and saying to somebody, well, you're fired?
Oh, absolutely. And you're right. A lot of people are concerned, afraid. They don't want to report it. What we see quite a bit also is when someone doesn't think it's that bad of an injury, they think, well, I hurt my back on Friday. I'm going to go home. I'm going to ice it.
Right.
I'm going to put heat on it. I'm going to relax. I'm going to be okay. And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's getting worse and worse and worse. So that's another thing I would say. Workers sometimes don't report cases because either they're afraid that they may lose their job, which they're certainly not supposed to. The law does protect people for reporting work injuries, and does not allow employers to retaliate by firing someone for an injury on the job, or for reporting one. And then the other thing is trying to minimize or trying to get through it. And so my advice is always, in fact, I wrote a book on this, The Ultimate Guide to Workers' Compensation, Protect Your Rights, is always to let your employer know, even if you don't think it's going to be a big deal, even if you don't think it's going to require more than getting yourself checked out at the doctor's just to make sure you're okay. And the reason for that is it's much easier to do that, and then hopefully you recover and you're doing well, and really nothing may ever come of it.
Right.
Than it is in the reverse situation when you don't tell anyone, you don't tell a supervisor, you don't tell a foreman, you don't tell your boss, and then try to deal with it, and after 2 or 3 weeks, you haven't reported it, no one knows about it. It's difficult then to go back. It gives them a reason to question the injury. All of a sudden, did you get hurt playing sports? Did you get hurt somewhere else? Did you get hurt, over the weekend? That kind of thing.
That makes sense. So, as far as employers are concerned, are they supposed to have workers' comp insurance?
Yes. Yes, they are. Some large corporations or entities are self-insured, but it's basically the same thing. They are supposed to have workers' compensation insurance insurance that covers them for on-the-job injuries of their employees. So usually what happens is if someone gets hurt on the job, they report it to their supervisor, to their HR, to a manager, and then that person calls the insurance company handles it from there.
Okay.
And there's really very little interaction between your job, the people you work with, and you over the work injury, over what you're doing or what kind of treatment you're getting. That's all handled by the insurance company. And they have specialists who do that.
Okay. So at what point would somebody that suffers a workers' compensation injury, should they get an attorney?
That is a good question, and I'd say part of that may depend on the extent of the injury, how bad it is.
Okay.
If it's a minor injury where the person's back to work right away, then they may not need an attorney. But what I tell everyone is to at least get the information, because workers' compensation laws are complicated, they're convoluted, they're different in D.C., Virginia, and Maryland. So you may work in Maryland but live in Virginia and get hurt in D.C., and you can get there are different ways of filing a claim, different benefit rates. The whole system's different in all three.
Okay.
So I tell everyone to at least get all the information to make the decision and to protect their rights, which again is the title of my book because of that, because the last thing you want to do is have an injury or have some problem that lingers that you haven't taken the steps to, to allow yourself to get the benefits that you should be getting.
Well, can you give us an example of how different the laws would be in Virginia, Maryland, and D.C. that would maybe make somebody want to, like, say, well, I'm going to file in this state because this is a better form for me?
Sure, absolutely. I would say a couple of things. I mean, the time frames are different. Virginia, you have 2 years to file a claim, and really you shouldn't be waiting that long, quite candidly. But for example, the benefit rate is higher in Washington, D.C. In other words, once you get hurt on the job, you're generally entitled, if you can't work due to your injury, to 2/3 of your income before you got hurt. But each jurisdiction has a cap, has a top limit on that amount. In D.C., it's higher because typically workers who work in D.C. a lot, they have higher wages. It's a higher, it's a higher income area, and it's a more expensive area.
Right.
If you're hurt in Fairfax, Virginia, it's still expensive. It's probably the D.C. area, but Virginia is a whole state, so you have people down in Bristol or Richmond or Blacksburg who maybe aren't making as much, so they have a lower statewide cap than D.C. does. So here's an example, and I see this a lot with union workers. In fact, I wrote a guide, a book, The Union Workers Guide to Workers' Compensation, because of this.
Okay.
Because they may work at different job sites during the year. A lot of times they will get hurt in D.C., but the insurance company will send them all the claim forms to file in Maryland, and they may not know, and the insurance company isn't going to tell them.
Right.
So they file their claim in Maryland, and they're getting benefits, and everything is great, but they're really losing hundreds of dollars every week.
Wow.
Once you get benefits in another state, you can't get benefits in Washington, D.C., which is another difference in the area. So there are a lot of tricks like that. What people have to remember is these insurance company adjusters, most of them have been doing this for a long, long time. Their duty is to the insurance company and its shareholders, and it's not to you when you get hurt on the job. So what they want to do is minimize the amount of medical treatment that you need or that they will pay for, minimize the time that you're out of work, minimize everything about your case, because that's what saves them money.
Right.
There's another key difference, and a lot of people don't realize this. In the district and in Maryland, you can choose your own doctor. You can choose your own physician, your own specialist to treat you for a work injury.
Okay.
And that's great because that is a way to get a real doctor who is, interested in you and who has your best interests at heart.
Right.
A lot of times, construction companies, insurance companies, large employers will try to send people to a workers' clinic, or they will say, well, you have to go to this doctor. He is on our list or our panel, or he's an approved workers' compensation doctor. Okay, well, ask yourself, how good is a doctor who gets all of his patients from a construction company, for example, or several construction companies?
Right.
Virginia's a little different. You get a choice of 3 doctors that they give to you, but that's another difference, in the area. For any serious work injury, I do recommend people at least talk to a lawyer or get information. Read books, read about it, and educate themselves so they can make a
informed decision.
Yeah, an informed decision and the best decision for themselves.
And let's say it's a union worker. Are there lists that the unions have of recommended attorneys to make it somewhat easier for people to find someone?
Some unions probably do.
Okay.
Okay. I think that's certainly one source, but I also think that union workers should do their own homework, find the right person for them, the best fit for that person and their family.
Right.
Is usually the way to go.
Okay. So if someone wanted to contact you for further information, how would they do that?
Well, there's a couple of ways. They can always call us at 202-393-3320 and go to our website at www.donahoekearney.com. And really, they can order one of our books or our guides that we can send them. Those I think are very helpful.
Yeah.
They're not written in any kind of legal jargon. They're written, for people and families.
Right.
To help make them, to help give them the information that they need so that they can make the right decision for themselves and for their family.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely, Regina. Thank you.
If you have any show ideas or would like to be a guest, please feel free to contact me at genxsmarty@gmail.com. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week on Making It Last.